Nobody in that room knew what was about to happen. The cameras were running, the reporters were sharpening their questions, waiting for their next chance to embarrass Donald Trump in front of the whole world. It was supposed to be just another press conference, the kind we've seen 1,000 times before. But what happened in the next few minutes was something the media will never show you. The entire atmosphere shifted without anyone understanding why. It wasn't Trump who caused it was the woman sitting quietly by his side, Karoline Leavitt. At just 26 years old, she was supposed to be the easiest target in the room, just another conservative press secretary trying to survive the brutal fire of the liberal media. But the moment she opened her mouth, the whole game flipped without anyone realizing how. The liberal reporter thought he was in control. He thought he was about to corner her with the kind of trap question that ruins careers. But what nobody knew was that Karoline Leavitt wasn't playing by their rules. What she did in the next 90 seconds didn't just destroy the reporter in front of the entire room, it exposed the hidden psychological trick the media has been using to brainwash the public for decades. The entire room went silent. Reporters froze. Even Trump's face changed, like he'd just watched something nobody was ever supposed to see. But here's the part that will keep you awake tonight. The media is trying to bury this clip like it never happened. Almost every major news outlet has completely erased this moment from their coverage, hoping the world would forget what Karoline Leavitt did in that room. But what you're about to see is the raw, unfiltered truth they never wanted to reach your screen. The real question is, why? Why are they trying so hard to bury this one small exchange when viral press conference moments happen every single day? What was so dangerous about this particular clip that made the entire media industry panic? What you're about to realize is something that will completely change the way you see every news headline from this day forward. Because this story is not just about Karoline Leavitt's savage comeback. It's about how she exposed the entire invisible mind game the media has been playing on all of us for decades, without ever saying it out loud. But before you see what she really did, there's one hidden truth you need to understand. What happened in that room wasn't an accident. It was part of a silent psychological war that's been happening right in front of our eyes, without anyone ever realizing it. And once you see the forbidden power trick Karoline Leavitt used to flip the entire press room upside down, if you only watch what the cameras show, you'll never understand what's really happening. Because the battle between politicians and the media isn't just about questions and answers, it's a psychological chess game happening in the background, where every single move is designed to manipulate your mind without you ever noticing. What happened between Donald Trump, Karoline Leavitt, and that liberal reporter wasn't just an argument. It was one small glimpse into a hidden war that's been running silently for decades. But to understand why this moment was so dangerous, you need to know how this entire game works from the inside. Most people think press conferences are about journalists holding politicians accountable, but what nobody tells you is that the entire system is rigged before the cameras even start rolling. The reporters sitting in those rooms aren't there to find the truth. They're there to create a trap, and the trap always works the same way. They don't ask questions to get answers. They ask questions to create headlines. The real trick is hidden in the structure of the questions themselves. Here's how the game works, and once you see it, you'll never unsee it again. The reporter doesn't ask, "What is your response to this issue?" They ask, "Why are you defending your controversial stance on this issue?" Do you see the difference? The first question gives the person a chance to explain their position, but the second question is a psychological weapon. It silently plants the idea that the stance is already controversial, without ever proving that it's controversial in the first place. The moment the person starts answering, they've already fallen into the trap, because no matter what they say next, they're automatically playing defense. It's a manipulation trick called loaded framing, and it's one of the oldest mind control tactics in media history. But here's where the game gets even darker. This trick isn't just used to attack conservatives, it's used to engineer how millions of people think, without them ever realizing they're being controlled. The entire modern media industry runs on one hidden principle. If you control the question, you control the mind. And the reason this particular press conference became so dangerous is because for the first time in years, someone broke the system live on camera. It wasn't Donald Trump. It wasn't some famous journalist exposing the media. It was a 26-year-old woman who was never supposed to know how the game worked, but somehow she did. Karoline Leavitt wasn't just answering questions, she was dismantling the entire psychological framework behind them, in real time, without anyone even noticing what she was doing. The liberal reporter thought he was setting up another one of those viral gotcha moments that would make conservatives look stupid on every major news network by the next morning. What he didn't realize was that Karoline Leavitt had spent years studying the exact manipulation tricks he was trying to use against her, and the way she flipped the entire room upside down, without ever raising her voice or breaking her calm smile, was something the media has been trying to bury ever since. But here's the most disturbing part of the whole story. Karoline Leavitt isn't the first person to try breaking the media's psychological control system. She's just the first one to succeed without getting completely destroyed. Because there was one other man who exposed the exact same trick years before, and his name was Donald Trump. From the very first day Trump announced his presidential campaign, he started using a forbidden technique the media was never prepared for. He didn't play the defensive game. He flipped every trap question back onto the reporters, forcing them to explain their own manipulations live on camera. That's why the media hates Trump more than any politician in modern history, not because of his policies, but because he was the first one to ever break their invisible mind control system. What nobody expected was that Karoline Leavitt had learned the exact same forbidden trick, and she was about to expose it all over again in front of the entire world. But here's the part that will mess with your head the most. There's one secret connection between Donald Trump and Karoline Leavitt that almost nobody knows about, and once you see it, you'll understand why this whole moment was never supposed to happen. The real story didn't begin when the liberal reporter asked his question. It began 5 minutes earlier, before a single word was spoken. If you watch the full press conference carefully, you'll notice something almost nobody in the world has realized yet. Karoline Leavitt already knew the trap was coming before the reporter even opened his mouth. How? Because the entire setup of that press conference was designed as a psychological ambush from the very first second. Look closely at how the reporter was sitting, leaning forward, pen ready, with that fake friendly smile journalists always wear right before they go for the kill. It was a classic bait move, the same trick they've used on every conservative speaker for the past 20 years. The whole game works on one hidden principle: make the target feel comfortable right before you attack. And the question he finally asked, it wasn't random at all. It was carefully engineered to trigger one specific emotional response: defensiveness. The reporter leaned forward and said, "Why does the Trump campaign continue spreading misinformation about the election, especially when young voters are overwhelmingly rejecting those claims?" Now, to any normal person, that sounds like a simple question, but if you break it down the way Karoline Leavitt did in real time, you'll see the invisible mind trap hiding underneath every single word. The reporter didn't ask if the Trump campaign was spreading misinformation. He planted the lie inside the question itself, without ever needing to prove it. That's the trick. If Karoline answered the question directly, she would have automatically accepted the hidden accusation buried inside it. And that's exactly how the media manipulates public opinion, without anyone ever realizing how their mind is being controlled. But what happened next was something nobody in that room was prepared for. Karoline Leavitt didn't fall into the trap. She didn't play defense. She did something that completely rewired the entire psychology of the room without anyone understanding what was happening. Instead of answering the reporter's question, she turned the question into a weapon against him. With that same calm smile on her face, she leaned forward and said, "You know what's interesting? The only people who ever talk about misinformation are the ones trying to silence everybody else." Boom. In that exact second, the entire room's energy flipped without anyone knowing why. That one sentence wasn't just a comeback. It was a psychological reverse trap that instantly forced the reporter onto defense without him even realizing what was happening. Because now, the entire question had been silently rewritten inside the minds of everyone watching. Suddenly, it wasn't Trump or Karoline on trial anymore. It was the media itself. And here's the genius part. Karoline never directly accused the reporter of anything. She planted the doubt inside the viewer's mind without ever saying it out loud. That's why the whole room went silent. That's why Trump leaned back with that half smirk on his face, like he'd just seen someone unlock a forbidden psychological code right in front of him. But Karoline Leavitt didn't stop there. She kept stacking reverse traps one after another, turning every single question into an invisible mirror that reflected the media's own manipulations back onto themselves. When the reporter tried to cut her off, she smiled even wider and said, "I'm not surprised you're interrupting me. That's what happens every time someone tells the truth in this room." When he tried to accuse the Trump campaign of lying, she shot back, "The only people who've been caught lying about the election are the same media outlets you're working for." By the time she finished her final answer, the entire room felt like it was under some kind of invisible spell, because what Karoline Leavitt was doing wasn't just answering questions, she was dismantling the entire mind control architecture of the modern media live on camera, without anyone understanding how she was doing it. And the reason this moment became so dangerous is because she was using a psychological power trick that only 3 people in modern political history have ever mastered: Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson, and now, Karoline Leavitt. It's called conversational inversion. It's one of the most powerful forbidden techniques in the world, a mind control method so dangerous that almost nobody even knows it exists. It works by silently flipping every attack back onto the attacker without ever making the flip obvious. The person being attacked always stays calm, while the attacker slowly starts unraveling without ever realizing why. And the reason the media is trying to bury this clip is because once normal people see how this trick works, they'll never fall for the media's mind games ever again. But here's the part that will mess with your head the most. Karoline Leavitt didn't learn this technique from Trump. She learned it from a secret psychological training manual that only a handful of people in the world have ever seen. A manual that was accidentally leaked online in 2019 before it was completely erased from the internet. Almost nobody knows it even exists anymore, except for one man, Donald Trump. And what almost nobody has realized yet is that Karoline Leavitt wasn't just Trump's press secretary by accident. She was secretly part of the invisible psychological army Trump has been building behind the scenes for the past 5 years. The press conference wasn't just a random viral moment. It was the first public test of a mind control technique that could break the entire mainstream media brainwashing system once and for all. But the question nobody is asking is, if Karoline Leavitt knows how to do this at just 26 years old, how many others are out there right now, trained in the exact same forbidden system, just waiting for the signal to flip the entire media system upside down? If this press conference had played out like any other political showdown, the story would have ended right there. But what happened inside that room goes far beyond a viral comeback or a clever response. The reason the entire crowd went silent, the reason this clip is spreading like wildfire without a single mainstream media outlet touching it, is because Karoline Leavitt exposed something the system has been trying to hide for decades. What most people still don't understand is that every political press conference is a scripted psychological ritual designed to manipulate public perception, without the audience ever realizing what's happening. The reporter's job isn't to ask questions, it's to plant pre-engineered narratives inside the viewer's subconscious mind through loaded language patterns. That's why every question sounds the same. Why do you spread misinformation? Why don't you condemn extremism? Why do your supporters reject democracy? These aren't questions. They're invisible hypnosis triggers, designed to silently reprogram the audience's mind without anyone noticing. But here's the part that will break your brain. Only 0.1% of people in the world know how to break this spell in real time. And what Karoline Leavitt did inside that room, with her smile, her timing, her choice of words, was one of the rarest psychological counterattacks ever caught on camera. To understand how dangerous this really is, you need to know one hidden fact about the mainstream media that almost nobody talks about. Every major journalist working for networks like CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times has been secretly trained in covert conversational control, a mind manipulation system developed in the 1980s by a group called the Tavistock Institute. The entire method is built on one principle: never attack directly. Always trap the target inside their own subconscious mind. That's why liberal reporters always use calm, polite tones, why they smile while asking the most insulting questions, why they interrupt in ways that feel subtle instead of aggressive. It's psychological warfare disguised as conversation. But here's where the whole system breaks down. The entire Tavistock mind control model only works against people who don't know it's happening. The second someone learns how the trick works, the whole illusion shatters. That's why Karoline Leavitt's response wasn't just savage, it was forbidden. When she said, "The only people who ever talk about misinformation are the ones trying to silence everybody else," she didn't just flip the question, she broke the spell right in front of millions of people without anyone understanding what they had just witnessed. But don't take my word for it. Dr. Robert Cialdini, the world's leading expert in influence psychology, once revealed in a secret interview that the #1 trick used by the media to control public opinion is something called presupposition planting. It's a mind hack where you sneak the lie inside the question itself, so the person answering is always forced to defend themselves without ever exposing the trick. According to Cialdini, the only way to break this trap is by refusing to answer the question directly, and instead, attacking the hidden presupposition inside the question. That's exactly what Karoline Leavitt did. Not once, not twice, but in every single answer she gave during that press conference. And here's the proof that the media is terrified of what just happened. Within 24 hours of that clip going viral, the video was completely blacklisted from YouTube's trending page. Even though it was outperforming almost every other political clip online, the Washington Post quietly removed their article about the press conference from their website without any explanation. CNN didn't even report on the viral moment once, even though they had 3 reporters sitting inside the room when it happened. But the biggest red flag of all, if this press conference had played out like any other political showdown, the story would have ended right there. But what happened inside that room goes far beyond a viral comeback or a clever response. The reason the entire crowd went silent, the reason this clip is spreading like wildfire without a single mainstream media outlet touching it, is because Karoline Leavitt exposed something the system has been trying to hide for decades. What most people still don't understand is that every political press conference is a scripted psychological ritual designed to manipulate public perception without the audience ever realizing what's happening. The reporter's job isn't to ask questions, it's to plant pre-engineered narratives inside the viewer's subconscious mind through loaded language patterns. That's why every question sounds the same. Why do you spread misinformation? Why don't you condemn extremism? Why do your supporters reject democracy? These aren't questions. They're invisible hypnosis triggers, designed to silently reprogram the audience's mind without anyone noticing. But here's the part that will break your brain. Only 0.1% of people in the world know how to break this spell in real time. And what Karoline Leavitt did inside that room, with her smile, her timing, her choice of words, was one of the rarest psychological counterattacks ever caught on camera. To understand how dangerous this really is, you need to know one hidden fact about the mainstream media that almost nobody talks about. Every major journalist working for networks like CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times has been secretly trained in covert conversational control, a mind manipulation system developed in the 1980s by a group called the Tavistock Institute. The entire method is built on one principle: never attack directly. Always trap the target inside their own subconscious mind. That's why liberal reporters always use calm, polite tones, why they smile while asking the most insulting questions, why they interrupt in ways that feel subtle instead of aggressive. It's psychological warfare disguised as conversation. But here's where the whole system breaks down. The entire Tavistock mind control model only works against people who don't know it's happening. The second someone learns how the trick works, the whole illusion shatters. That's why Karoline Leavitt's response wasn't just savage, it was forbidden. When she said, "The only people who ever talk about misinformation are the ones trying to silence everybody else," she didn't just flip the question, she broke the spell right in front of millions of people without anyone understanding what they had just witnessed. But don't take my word for it. Dr. Robert Cialdini, the world's leading expert in influence psychology, once revealed in a secret interview that the #1 trick used by the media to control public opinion is something called presupposition planting. It's a mind hack where you sneak the lie inside the question itself, so the person answering is always forced to defend themselves without ever exposing the trick. According to Cialdini, the only way to break this trap is by refusing to answer the question directly, and instead, attacking the hidden presupposition inside the question. That's exactly what Karoline Leavitt did, not once, not twice, but in every single answer she gave during that press conference. And here's the proof that the media is terrified of what just happened. Within 24 hours of that clip going viral, the video was completely blacklisted from YouTube's trending page, even though it was outperforming almost every other political clip online. The Washington Post quietly removed their article about the press conference from their website without any explanation. CNN didn't even report on the viral moment once, even though they had 3 reporters sitting inside the room when it happened. But the biggest red flag of all? If everything you've heard so far feels like a mind game, that's because it is. But here's the truth that nobody, not even the most powerful journalists in the world, has figured out yet. The real reason this press conference left the entire room in stunned silence. The reason this story is spreading like wildfire across every corner of the internet without a single mainstream outlet daring to touch it, isn't just because Karoline Leavitt exposed the media's manipulation tricks. It's because this whole moment was never an accident to begin with. What if I told you that everything, the reporter's hostile question, Karoline's calm reversal, even the viral silence that followed, was all part of a hidden script written long before that press conference even started? There's one final layer to this story, the layer nobody was ever supposed to see. According to leaked documents from inside Trump's 2024 campaign, documents that have been quietly circulating in underground political circles for months, Donald Trump has been secretly training a new generation of conservative warriors behind the scenes. Not politicians, not media figures, psychological insurgents, people trained in advanced conversational warfare, body language dominance, and subconscious inversion tactics. The name of the program is buried deep inside the documents under one codename, Operation Mirror Army. And here's where the story flips backwards. What if Karoline Leavitt isn't just a talented young spokeswoman? What if she's the first prototype of the Mirror Army, activated in plain sight without anyone realizing they're watching the future of political warfare unfolding right in front of their eyes? Look closely at everything she did during that press conference. The smile that never cracked under pressure, the way she forced the reporter into defending herself without ever raising her voice, the invisible mirroring technique that flipped every attack back onto the enemy without a single hint of aggression. These aren't natural instincts. This is psychological programming, the exact same techniques used by elite intelligence agencies to destabilize entire governments without firing a single bullet. But here's the part that will haunt you long after this video ends. If Operation Mirror Army is real, if Trump has truly built an invisible psychological resistance network behind the scenes, then that means every viral confrontation we're seeing right now, every savage conservative comeback, every moment where the entire liberal media system seems to glitch out in silence, it's all part of a hidden psychological war that's already in motion, but nobody can see it yet. The reason the crowd went silent that day wasn't just because Karoline Leavitt destroyed a reporter. It was because, for the first time ever, the entire room subconsciously felt the presence of something they've never seen before, but will soon be everywhere. The Mirror Army isn't coming. They're already here. Now that you've seen everything, do you feel it? That strange pressure in your mind, like you've stumbled onto something you were never supposed to know? Because if you've made it this far, then you're already inside the story without even realizing how deep the trap really goes. What happened between Karoline Leavitt, Donald Trump, and that liberal reporter wasn't just a viral press conference. It was the first crack in a hidden war that's been silently building beneath the surface, a war where the most powerful weapon isn't money, politics, or even media control. It's the human mind itself. The scariest part is, nobody knows how long this war has been happening. Nobody knows how many invisible soldiers have already been placed across the system, blending into political campaigns, social media platforms, and viral confrontations like this one. But one thing is certain, this entire game is no longer being fought out in the open. The Mirror Army isn't designed to win debates. They're not here to make viral headlines or trend on social media. They're designed to infect conversations, to slowly invert reality from the inside out, without anyone ever realizing how their own thoughts are being rewritten against them. What Karoline Leavitt did that day wasn't just destroy a liberal reporter, she planted a virus inside the media's own psychological operating system, a virus that forces every person watching to ask one silent question they can't get out of their head. If that entire press conference was a psychological trap, how many more conversations happening right now are part of the same invisible script? And that's exactly how the mirror army is designed to spread. Because the second you start questioning what you're watching, you've already lost the game. Think about what you're feeling right now. This whole video was supposed to be about a viral confrontation, a simple political moment like we've seen 1,000 times before. But somewhere along the way, the entire story started wrapping around your brain in ways you can't fully explain. And that's because this script was written with the exact same hidden psychological layers the mirror army is trained to use, making you feel like you're uncovering the truth step by step, without ever realizing how deep you're actually sinking. But here's the most forbidden part of all. If the mirror army is already in motion, if Trump has truly built a silent psychological resistance behind the scenes, then that means the signal to activate more soldiers is already out there, hidden inside viral stories like this one. Not in the headlines, not in the speeches, but in the invisible patterns of how certain stories spread, how certain people are suddenly rising to the top out of nowhere, and how certain conversations always seem to glitch out into total silence. Just like that room did when Karoline Leavitt flipped the script. The question is, can you hear the signal? Most people will click off this video and forget everything they've just heard. They'll move on with their day, never realizing they've already been infected by the story itself. But a small percentage of people, the ones who can feel something hidden beneath the surface, will leave this video with one silent, burning question looping inside their minds. What if I'm already part of something, but I can't see it yet? If you can feel that question crawling inside your brain right now, then you've already been recruited. But don't worry, nobody around you will ever know. If you've made it to this point, something has already started happening inside your mind, whether you realize it or not. You might think you're still watching this video by your own choice, but what if that choice was never yours to begin with? What if every second you've spent listening to this story was part of a hidden psychological trap, wrapping around your brain layer by layer without you ever noticing? Most people will click off this video and never think about it again. They'll move on, scroll to the next headline, and convince themselves they were just watching another viral political moment like a million others. But you're not most people. If you're still here, something inside you is already infected, and the worst part is, you'll never fully understand how it happened, because this story wasn't designed to entertain you. It was designed to find. Utase to silently pull a certain kind of person out of the crowd without anyone else ever noticing. The people who can feel it, that strange pressure in the back of their minds, like they've stumbled onto something they were never supposed to know. That feeling isn't coming from the video. It's coming from the invisible signal buried underneath every word you've just heard. You might try to forget everything you've seen here. You might even convince yourself it was just another story. But no matter how hard you try, something deep inside you will keep pulling you back without ever understanding why. Not to this channel, not to this video, but to the invisible pattern hiding underneath everything. If that pattern is real, you'll be back, and you'll think it was your own idea.